The anime is set in a world where the goddess of fate chooses 6 warriors to fight the demon god. Those heroes who will be given the power to save the world are known as the Braves of the 6 Flowers. And the main character of this anime, Adlet, is a young man who proclaims himself as the strongest in the world. Not only that, he is also sure that the goddess will choose him as a brave. However, despite these arrogant claims, he is actually quite skilled in fighting and also smart, thanks to the knowledge he has. As for his abilities, he was able to get them because as a child, Adlet had studied at the place of a cruel teacher named Spiker. He was so cruel that Adlet became very thin while studying with him. Even when he graduated, he only graduated alone, because the other students had already quit because they could no longer endure the cruelty. But Adlet was able to survive there because he had high ambition, which was none other than to become the strongest person in the world. And besides, despite his ruthlessness, Spiker mastered many abilities. Among these are the arts of fighting, weapon making, and the natural sciences. In other words, those abilities are very useful for him to learn. Because of his abilities, and also because of his arrogance, Adlet dared to interrupt the martial arts tournament between warriors in the Piena Kingdom. The winner of the tournament will then be faced with the defending champion, Princess Nashitania. But before the tournament can have a winner, Adlet has rushed into chaos, challenging the strongest contestants in the tournament and defeating them by relying on smoke bombs. So actually, it could be said it was Adlet who became the winner of the tournament, even though he won it by cheating. And as one might expect, instead of welcoming the winner, the audience got angry and threw stones at Adlet. The royal guards also got into the action by arresting Adlet and throwing him in prison. Because it was a sin to interfere with a tournament that was considered sacred, he was even sentenced to life imprisonment. However, after nearly a year of being alone behind a prison cell, the sky suddenly turned red, a sign that the demon god had awakened. The demon god has actually lived since time immemorial, and he and his army have brought calamity to the world. But at that time, a person called the Flower Knight managed to defeat the demon god. Although after that, the knight predicted that the demon god would rise one day. Therefore, there would be 6 braves who would inherit the knight's power to defeat the demon god once again, and they would receive some kind of flower tattoo as a sign that they had been chosen. And it turns out that Adlet got the mark. Just as the sky turned red, a strange light came over him, before finally a flower tattoo appeared on his hand. While Adlet is cheering happily for being chosen as a brave, Nashitania suddenly comes to his cell, informing him that she has also been chosen as a brave. And so, she got him out of jail, and they both left town on horseback to find the other 4 braves. During their journey, Adlet gets the chance to get to know Nashitania better. It turns out that she is a saint of blades, so she is able to control sharp weapons at will. Saints itself here is a term for women who are blessed with special abilities by the gods. Only women can become saints, so Adlet can't be one of them, no matter how adamantly he claims to be the strongest person in the world. But not only a saint, Nashitania is also the daughter of the king of Piena. It's just that her family was killed when the civil war broke out 6 years ago. Since then, the Piena kingdom has been controlled by the prime ministers. Nashitania also informs Adlet about Goldov, a knight whose strength is equal to her. Despite his youth, Goldov was reliable, and moreover, he had sworn allegiance to Nashitania. Because of that, they could ask for his help in finding the other braves. Then, after a few days of starting their journey, Adlet and Nashitania arrived at an area where the inhabitants were being evacuated due to the threat of demons. Feeling pity, they decided to eradicate the demons before helping treat the injured villagers. Then, one of them said there was still a girl left in the village. Hearing that, Adlet went to the village to save the girl, while Nashitania stayed behind to look after the villagers. But strangely, when Adlet arrived at the village, he found the monsters had died. And it was at this moment that he realized that the girl had not been left behind, but had deliberately stayed there to fight the monsters. After exploring the village for a while, he finally saw the girl, Flamey, who turned out to be one of the braves blessed with the power of a saint of gunpowder. Meanwhile, where Nashitania was, Goldov, who had also been chosen as the brave, finally appeared before her. And to her surprise, Goldov tells her that Flamey is a brave killer. Sure enough, Flamey immediately pointed her gun at Adlet as soon as she saw him. It was true that she disliked humans, including the braves, and because of that, she was determined to fight the demon god alone. Even so, she didn't hurt Adlet. She only asked him to leave her alone before walking away. But Adlet, who is still curious about her, decides to go after her and snatch all her bullets, and thus forced her to follow him. Some time passed, and finally Nashitania and Goldov arrived at the village. But at that time, Adlet had left with Flamey. He had only left a letter for Nashitania on his horse, telling her to go to the gathering place for the braves without having to wait for him or Flamey, who had now joined him. Adlet and Flamey themselves had walked quite a distance from the village. They now arrived at a fortress, where they were greeted by the soldiers guarding there. Apparently, the fortress was close to the territory of the demon god, and the demons had attacked it several times, as evidenced by the many corpses of humans and demons strewn around the place. That's why, in order to prevent the demons' attacks, the leader of the fortress guards asked Adlet and Flamey for help to activate the barrier at a temple not far from there. And the good news was, according to the leader of the guards, a brave named Mora was already at the shrine, waiting for the other braves. There is good news, and there must be bad news. And the bad news was, one of the braves had to stay inside the temple. Because once the barrier is activated, the people inside the shrine can't go out anymore. After getting all that information, as well as learning how to activate the barrier, Adlet and Flamey resumed their journey. And it was at this time Flamey suddenly said that if all the braves had met, they would kill each other. But before Adlet asked her what she meant, two people suddenly attacked her. It turned out to be Goldov and Nashitania, who then asked Adlet to stay away from Flamey. After that, Nashitania and Goldov continued to attack Flamey. But their fight only lasted a moment because Adlet told them to stop. He then shows a flower tattoo on Flamey's hand, which takes Nashitania and Goldov by surprise since they thought she was a brave killer. Unexpectedly, Flamey admits right away that Nashitania and Goldov are right, she is indeed a brave killer. In fact, she had killed several previously appointed braves so she could kill the demon god alone. Hearing that blunt confession, Nashitania and Goldov were about to attack her again. However, Adlet stopped them, saying that he had put his trust in Flamey, and that Nashitania should have forgiven her too. After all, they all had the same goal, to defeat the demon god. Fortunately, Adlet's efforts were successful. The three of them agreed to a truce so that the journey could be resumed. When they were not far from the shrine, they found flying demons throwing bombs at the shrine, while a group of land demons blocked the path leading there. Worried about the state of the temple, Nashitania then asked Adlet to go first, while the rest would hold off the demons. Adlet, the self-proclaimed strongest human being, carries out the task with gusto. He ran as fast as he could towards the temple until he finally met an injured woman in front of the building. At first, he tried to help her, but she instead asked him to hurry to the temple. Adlet did what the woman wanted, although when he tried to open the temple door, it was locked. But it didn't matter much to him. He had a bomb to force open the sturdy door. But to his surprise, it turns out that there are demons in the temple. And to make matters worse, the previous woman turned out to be a demon in disguise. However, as soon as she saw Adlet crush the two demons in the temple with ease, she fled in a hurry, forcing Adlet to chase after her. Failing to catch the demon, and also because suddenly a fog appeared, Adlet then decided to just go straight into the temple. As soon as he entered, he was shocked to see that the barrier was already active. Then a moment later, Nashitania entered the shrine, and they were just as confused as Adlet when they saw the barrier had been prematurely activated. With this, they were all officially trapped around the shrine. They then tried to deactivate the barrier, but no matter what they did, the barrier was still active. Their helplessness even angered Princess Nashitania, and she vented it by destroying some of the artifacts there. After that, something strange happened. Three people suddenly entered the temple. They were Chamat, Mora, and Hans, and all three of them are braves too, as evidenced by the tattoos on their hands. So that means there are 7 braves: Adlet, Nashitania, Goldov, Flamey, Chamat, Mora, and Hans. Never before had there been 7 braves. From the beginning, the total number of braves had always been only 6. Now they were all confused, facing each other with suspicious eyes. They couldn't help but conclude that there was a fake brave among them, someone they should regard as an enemy. And the person they suspect the most is Flamey, even more so after Chamat claims that Flamey has tried to kill her before. It was only because Chamat was stronger than Flamey that the assassination attempt ended in failure. In fact, Chamat also claims to be the strongest warrior in the world. It was at this point that Mora showed her composure by suggesting that they each introduce themselves to make it easier for them to spot the fake brave. With this, they began to introduce themselves one by one. Mora claims to be the Saint of Mountains, as well as the leader of all saints in the world. Everyone who gains power and wants to become a saint must come to her place to introduce themselves, and because of that, she recognizes every saint. Meanwhile, Chamat is a saint of swamps who is only 14 years old, and Hans is an assassin who was ordered by the king of his country to kill the demon god. Then it was Flamey's turn to tell her story, and the first thing she did was ask Mora to take off her blindfold. But after her blindfold is removed, to their surprise, they find Flamey has signs that suggest she is descended from both humans and demons. She didn't deny it, and even admitted that her mother was a demon. But despite it all, Flamey still claims that she is not a fake brave. Instead, she suspected Mora was a fake. Hans agreed that Flamey wasn't the fake brave, though he wasn't sure that Mora was the one. He was more suspicious of Adlet, who was, after all, the first among them to enter the temple. He suspected that Adlet had deliberately activated the barrier to trap them in this place. His suspicions were justified. Only humans could activate the barrier, and there was no way the barrier would activate by itself, so only Adlet, who entered the shrine first, had a chance to activate it. The situation changes rapidly. Now everyone except Nashitania turned their suspicions on Adlet. Adlet tried to defend himself, but no matter what he said, the other braves didn't believe him. Hans and Goldov even attempt to attack him, forcing Adlet to use a flash bomb and take Flamey hostage to escape them. But unfortunately, Hans managed to stab Adlet before he fled, causing him to lose blood and eventually fall unconscious in the forest outside the temple. On the other hand, Hans and the others were trying to find Adlet and Flamey. They knew Flamey was still alive, because according to Mora, if one of the braves died, one petal and the tattoo on their hand would disappear. The scene then shows Adlet dreaming about his past, when he was still living with his mother in a village. But one day, a demon came to the village and destroyed it, while the villagers were either massacred or kidnapped, all except Adlet. And so, carrying a grudge within him, Adlet meets Otro Spiker and asks to train him so that he can become the strongest person. At this moment, Adlet finally wakes up, with his wound having been treated by Flamey, who still hopes he isn't a fake brave. And to convince herself more, she asked Adlet why he wanted to be a brave. Here Adlet tells her all about his past, including when he studied with Otro Spiker, and also how a humanoid lizard-like demon attacked his village in the past, so he wanted revenge. After Adlet finished telling the story, it was Flamey's turn to tell her past. It turns out that her mother, who is a demon, betrayed her and even tried to kill her after she failed to kill Chamat. And that in turn made Flamey end up hating demons, especially the demon god. That's why she was determined to take revenge on her family and defeat the demon god. Having said all that, Flamey chose to part with Adlet and return to the other braves. Although before leaving, she handed Adlet a magic item, where she would be able to find out his location through the object. The next day, the braves resumed their quest to find Adlet, and this time, they decided to split into 3 groups. Flamey would pair up with Mora, Nashitania with Goldov, and Hans with Chamat. Sometime after they split up, Adlet realized that the braves had already started to move in search of him, and he felt this was a good opportunity to retrieve his equipment that was still left in the temple. But unfortunately, he ran into Hans, who immediately attacked him as soon as he saw him. Their fight was so fierce, until the point where Adlet decided to throw away all his weapons, including the bombs. Now he only relies on the sword to fight Hans. But Hans wasn't a fool. He suspected Adlet had a secret plan, and his conjecture was right. Adlet's sword can actually be fired like a bullet. However, even though he had the chance to kill Hans, Adlet purposely missed his shot to prove that he wasn't the imposter. That, however, was still not enough to convince Hans. And because of that, he tried to test Adlet by creating the illusion of himself slitting Adlet's throat. But it didn't take long for Adlet to realize that it was all a hallucination. And when he asked Hans what he was doing, he replied that he created the illusion to see Adlet's dying reaction, because when one realizes that his life is ending, he can't lie. Adlet showed no sign that he was lying just now, and Hans now believed that Adlet was not the fake brave. Meanwhile, the other braves are still actively looking for Adlet while suspecting each other. Like Nashitania, who suspected that Hans could be the fake brave, and he asked for Goldov's help to prove her suspicions. The person she suspected was now with Adlet at the temple, looking for clues. But later outside, they run into Chamat, who has decided that the most effective way to find the fake brave is to kill everyone. And so, she attacked them by summoning demons from within her. Chamat is the saint of swamps. Because of that, she was able to eat the demons alive, and the demons then lived in the swamp in her stomach. Only when she needed them as weapons would she spit them out. And to make matters worse, the demons can regenerate, making it difficult for Adlet and Hans to deal with them. But thanks to their effective teamwork and quick thinking, they finally managed to knock out Chamat, which at the same time stopped the demons. Then, to prevent Chamat from attacking them again, Adlet and Hans decide to tie her up, before questioning her about whether she previously knew how to activate the barrier. She shook her head, and that was enough for Adlet to believe that Chamat wasn't a fake brave. Therefore, he asked Hans to look after Chamat, while he went to meet Flamey to discuss his hypothesis. He used the item she gave him to tell her his location, and after she appeared in front of him, Adlet immediately expressed his suspicions about the involvement of a saint who could create mist, causing them to be fooled into thinking the barrier was active. But unfortunately, Flamey rejected Adlet's hypothesis, and she grew doubts about him instead. She became more and more suspicious of him after he confessed his feelings to her. She thought maybe Adlet was trying to trick her. Meanwhile, Mora, who has returned to the temple, is surprised to see Chamat tied up. Seeing Mora's reaction, Hans tried to explain to her what had happened, but somehow it made her think that Adlet really was the fake brave. And so, she used her power, which was a kind of telepathy, and ordered all the braves to capture Adlet. Not only that, she also told Nashitania and Goldov that Adlet almost killed Hans. Obviously, the news made Nashitania furious. Meanwhile, upon hearing Mora's orders, Flamey immediately attacks Adlet, forcing him to flee. She continued to pursue him relentlessly while signaling the other braves about their location. The signal was seen by Mora, who immediately rushed to where Adlet was and attacked him ferociously. So now, he must fight two people at once. But then, suddenly, Adlet decided to stop his resistance, and then tried to convince Mora that Flamey was innocent. So even if Mora killed him and discovered that he wasn't the fake brave, she would no longer suspect Flamey. Touched by Adlet's kindness, Flamey then decides to trust him. She stops Mora just before she kills him, and then takes him away from there. But before they can get far, they are stopped by the attacks of Nashitania and Goldov, who are now convinced that Adlet is the fake brave, and a battle of 3 against 2 ensued. Outnumbered, Adlet and Flamey were cornered by their 3 opponents. That's why they decided to split up. Adlet would return to the temple to reunite with Hans and ask for his help, while Flamey would try to hold off Nashitania and the others. Adlet managed to escape from the fight, but, unfortunately, Flamey could not last long to withstand the onslaught of her opponents. She collapsed, allowing Nashitania and Goldov to catch up with Adlet. At this point, Adlet could no longer fight them. His energy had been drained a lot, and not to mention he was injured from the constant fighting. In the end, Goldov managed to subdue him. But then, when Nashitania, Goldov, Mora, and Flamey, who had been captured, regrouped, Nashitania was surprised to see Hans and Chamat walking towards them. Contrary to what Mora had said, Hans was fine and unharmed in the slightest. She finally realized that Adlet was innocent, and thus, she apologized to him. As if fed up with everything, at this moment, Adlet told everyone that he already had a theory of how the fake brave tricked and trapped them all. So, according to him, the mist around the shrine was created by high heat, and the only person who could do that was Riura, the saint of sun who had disappeared long ago. It was possible that Riura was kidnapped or even teamed up with the fake brave. Then right after Adlet opened the shrine door, Riura was killed, so the temperature dropped drastically and the mist appeared. To prove his theory, Adlet asked Hans to look for Riura's body. And sure enough, Hans managed to find the body. Adlet then thought Mora was the fake brave, but his deduction was refuted by Chamat and Hans, who then presented their findings, namely a copy of the artifact and equipment to activate the barrier. And in the second artifact, listed the actual steps for activating the barrier, which include casting a spell and destroying the artifact. Hearing that, everyone's gazes instantly fell on Nashitania, the one who destroyed the artifact the moment they entered the shrine. And Adlet still remembered, it was Nashitania who told him to go first to the temple. With all the evidence against her, she finally admits that she is indeed the fake brave they've been looking for. She said that she wanted to kill the braves in order to create a world where humans and demons could coexist peacefully, although in the process, around 500,000 humans might have to lose their lives. Hearing the madness made Adlet realize that Nashitania really sided with the demons, and so he ordered all his comrades to kill her. But alas, they are not fast enough. Nashitania manages to escape while Adlet collapses from the loss of blood. A few moments passed, and Adlet woke up with Mora sitting beside him. She apologizes for suspecting him to be a fake brave, and also for her inability to identify Nashitania. Outside, Goldov was moping, still not believing that Nashitania had betrayed them. The next day, the barrier had disappeared from the vicinity of the shrine, and so, the braves started getting ready to go to the demon god's place. However, just before they left, a woman named Rilonia appeared, and to their surprise, she apologized for being late due to being blocked by the barrier. Turns out, Rilonia was also one of the braves. Amidst the confusion, they decided to delay identifying which of them was the next fake brave. They don't have time anymore, because they must hurry to defeat the demon god. And so, the anime ends with the 7 heroes walking toward the territory of the demon god. The moral that we can learn from this anime is to choose wisely who we can trust and whom we should doubt. Don't trust someone right away, no matter how beautiful or sexy they are.